For just about as long as man has been building, he's been obsessed with height. As Dubai's new building, Burj Dubai, surpasses Taipei 101 and the CN Tower as both the world's tallest building and tallest freestanding structure, we take a look at the past, present, and future of skyscrapers with Antony Wood of the Illinois Institute of Technology. He's also Executive Director of the Council for Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, hi.
Antony, I guess I'm kind of curious, what's behind the quest for height? Is it about dominance? Is it the sort of typical phallic base symbol we think, or is there more to it than that?
Well, I think you're right. As you started there, I think the history of mankind has showed that man always has had this ambition to build high. What's driving it? I think that man has always wanted to build high. I think a lot of it is an iconic thing to be seen above the masses, and I certainly think that's one of the factors that is driving some of the world's tallest buildings around the world today.
Let me take a stab at it from a different direction, ask your opinion on this. I've done a fair amount of investing in real estate, and when you start to talk about downtown cores in some of the cities where these buildings are being made, and you're spending $36 to $50 million an acre, the only way to get a return on the investment is to go straight up and get tremendous density. Isn't what's driving height return of capital the only thing that really matters, the return of the dollars invested in the purchase of the land?
Well, I think there's two factors there. I think if you look historically, the real estate prices, the price of land, has traditionally driven tall buildings. However, today I think there are other factors involved. I think some of the super tall buildings that are being built perhaps are not inspired only by financial prices or price of land. I think they're also driven by ambition of people and corporations, and I think the history of the world's tallest buildings has always shown that. I think the difference in the past, perhaps decade or 5 or 6 years, has been you can see it in the title of the projects themselves. Whereas for the first 100 years or so of the world's tallest buildings, these were driven predominantly by by companies, so you'd see the Sears Tower, the Chrysler building. I think what's changed in the past 10 years or so is that these projects very much involve the governments or city fathers in these countries, and now you can see the titles such as the Burj Dubai, Taipei 101. The location of the city is very much part of the title and part of the project. So it's not just about an economic thing. There are people who believe that super tall buildings don't actually stack up economically, i.e. the costs of constructing over a certain height perhaps don't make sense, and therefore there's other factors driving it.
Of course, Burj Dubai at an estimated $4+ billion is pretty costly. It was in part, Antony, precisely what it expressed that made the World Trade Center a target for terrorists, and it seemed in the aftermath of that there would be fear around tall buildings. Have we gotten past that? Is that now behind us?
Well, I think the answer is yes. However, 2 days after the 6th anniversary of 9/11, I think you've got to. Everybody is aware that that was, one of the biggest events that has happened on a world scale, let alone a building scale, perhaps ever. And I think what that did, that threw a big question mark over the appropriateness of tall buildings in our urban centres. It threw a very big question mark, and I think you're right. Many people, many organisations questioned whether tall buildings would be suitable into the future. However, 6 years on from that, I think we can answer that there's been a resounding vote in favour of tall buildings, and you only have to look at the amount of construction that is going on in virtually every city, tall building construction in every city in the US and overseas, to answer that there has been a vote in confidence in tall buildings. I think this is driven twofold. I think first, people, although the events of 9/11 were obviously grotesque and terrible, I think people on reflection have taken into account the fact that the chances of that happening to other tall buildings or all other tall buildings is very, very remote. So I think people have become to accept that the risk of living in a tall building and suffering a terrorist attack is not particularly high. And I think the other factor that what 9/11, the question mark that it brought out, as you say in your question, was, are they safe? And I think I can say resoundingly 6 years later that the amount of research that has gone into making tall buildings safer, so that buildings not only that are being built now, but also buildings that are in existence and have been for perhaps even 100 years or more in some cases, retrospectively, systems are also being applied to make these tall buildings safer than they've ever been. Despite the events of 9/11, I think if you actually look at the history of tall buildings, you'll find that there have been very few fatalities in tall buildings.
All right. Well, they seem to be with us to stay. Antony, we appreciate your joining us.
Yep, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Antony Wood is with the Illinois Institute of Technology.